Hello everybody. Let's jump in and take a look at some of the key features. Okay, I'll just log in. And straight away I'm greeted with my home page or my home dashboard. Now I can change this to be literally any dashboard I want through my user preferences. But right now I've set it to show me a high-level summary of my entire network, and that shows me at a glance how many devices I have under management, along with their status, the number of active incidents, along with their severity. It shows me my key business services and their status. It shows me the rate at which events are coming in, another indication of how healthy my network is. And finally, but by no means least, I've got a nice interactive geographical map that shows where in the world these devices are located, by site or perhaps by customer if you're an MSP, plus an indication of health at those sites. Now, just before I go any further, I'd like to quickly point out a few key components of the UI framework that we can use for navigation. The first is the main menu up here, and this is where I can switch between dashboard mode, reports mode. I can go in to change administration settings, my preferences, and so on. But most of the time we'll be spending in the dashboards area. The second is the Explorer bar, and this allows me to see and change the current context, or rather what I'm interested in seeing information about right now. As we can see right now, I'm looking at my network, which reflects everything that my user account is allowed to see. And I can change that context through the Explorer or through just drilling down through the dashboards. And finally is the dashboard bar over here. And this is where I choose what information I want to see about my chosen context. We have our favorites at the top, but actually there's many more dashboards that we can choose from. And if you have permission, there's a dashboard configuration option down the bottom where you can configure all of your dashboards, content, layout, add, remove dashboards, and so on, assign access and so on. Okay, so let's come back to the first questions that people often ask. What assets do I have? Where are they? And how are they connected? So to help solve this first problem, Entuity provides continuous automated discovery to find all of your network assets and bring them into the product. In ENA19, we've enhanced our asset discovery feature, which is accessible to administrators and any users with sufficient permission. So let me click on the asset management page, and you'll see what we've done. So first, this page shows me the servers that are taking part in this demo. I just have two for now. How many assets each is managing, and how many license credits are being consumed. Now, this is just a small demo, but each server can comfortably handle over 1,000 fully managed devices, over 100,000 interfaces, and in turn, you can easily scale out by adding more servers whilst continuing to see and control everything through a single UI. By linking multiple servers together, Entuity can easily handle from 100 devices to many tens of thousands. And for example, one of our large customers to date is on their way to having over 200,000 core infrastructure devices under management. Now, you may have noticed that our asset summary here shows 75 devices instead of the 62 as per our homepage. And that's because one of the servers has discovered 13 assets that are not yet under management. So let's drill down into that and take a look. Okay, so here we can see a full list of the devices being managed by this server. Now, Entuity covers physical and virtual assets, traditional and software-defined infrastructure, as well as servers and storage devices, and it's completely vendor agnostic. For controller-based devices, such as wireless controllers, VM platforms, software-defined controllers, Entuity can go inside and discover all the associated assets for which the controller is acting as a proxy. I can see we have a wireless controller here that has 97 associated devices. If I drill down, it's no surprise they're all wireless access points. And associated devices appear as children of their parent controller throughout the UI. And just like directly managed devices, I can choose which ones I'm interested in managing through the controller to obtain basic status and metrics about. Now, if I come back to the Discovered Assets page, we can see all of the assets that have been discovered by this Entuity server, whether they're being managed or not. And I can see straight away that we have a number of devices that have not been taken under management here. And that should act as a call to attention that maybe I have some blind spots in my management that I want to deal with. It shows me I've got a few devices that have failed to add for some reason, either bad credentials or not responding following the initial discovery. I also have a number of new devices highlighted in blue that have been discovered. Now, the list may be very long, so we provide this handy filter to focus on just the new assets. And at this point, you can choose to either manage the items or mark them as not to be managed so that Entuity doesn't keep pestering you about them in the future. If I click on the auto discovery, we can see that Entuity supports discovery profiles. I have 3 profiles in this demo, but you can have as many profiles as you want to represent different parts of your network, different offices, different customers if you're an MSP. And each discovery profile can have its own discovery schedule or just be executed manually. And of course, you can configure Entuity to onboard new assets automatically, or just let you pick and choose post-discovery using the Discovered Assets tab. Okay, so let's come back to the home page by clicking the Entuity logo here. Now, if I'm not an administrator and I don't have the asset management permission, I can still see all the devices I have access to by taking a look at the contents dashboard. Let me just uncheck the hierarchy button for a second. And we can see all the devices along with their status, type, worst incident, etc. Now, unlike the asset management page, while I'm in dashboard mode, all information from all servers is consolidated into a single user interface. So it just looks like one big server. Now, I said that Entuity could handle many thousands of devices, so to help users manage that number of devices, Entuity allows you to place them into groups which we call views. Let's go back to the hierarchy for a second. Now, there are just 2 system views, all objects, which is everything across the entire system, across all my servers, and my network, which is everything that the logged in user has permission to see. I'm an administrator, so I can see everything. However, administrators can further add views to partition their networks in a way that makes sense to their business. In this demo, we've created some views to group by technology and some by geography. Now, it's important to note that the views can be manually or automatically populated using view filters. So as new devices are discovered, Entuity can automatically add those devices to the appropriate views to minimize administration overhead according to the rules that you define, e.g. by name, type, location, IP address, and much, much more. Okay, so having grouped everything by geography allows us to take advantage of our Maps dashlet, which seamlessly integrates with Google Maps, showing you exactly where in the world your assets are. Now, combined with colored markers showing the number and severity of the worst incidents, the maps give a clear indication of network health across your entire network, and it's great for knock screens. If we hover over a marker, we can see another summary information about the number of devices, services, network paths, and incidents at that particular location. And it's worth noting that you can configure the markers to pulse or even remain green until key incidents occur, such as network outages, in order to draw attention only to the things that really matter to you. That's fully configurable. Now, if I drill down into this location, now we've got a lot of sites here in the UK. Let me drill in a little bit further. We've got some issues clearly here in the London area. Okay, let's keep going. All right, we've got Starbucks, we've got London HQ. I'm going to focus on London HQ first of all. Now let me double click in there. You'll notice that when I get right down to the device level, the map automatically switches into a topological mode, so it shows the actual connectivity between devices. Please note that unlike many other products, Entuity automatically determines this network topology for you, right down to the interface level. If I click on one of these links here and show the details, we can see the actual interfaces at either end, along with the status, and we can see the protocol that was used to discover that particular connection. Now, all of this topology information is available for export as a Visio diagram or via our REST API for consumption into third-party products, or indeed your own in-house reports and tools. So now I know what I have, I know where it is, and I know how it's connected. My next question is, how is the system doing, and how can we track the health of the system? So to start with, Entuity continuously collects a vast array of metrics on all devices, all interfaces, and other objects in the system. And it presents the status of these items using simple, clear, red, amber, green status indicators, along with icons to represent any open instance on the said items, which I'll talk about later. Let's jump into one of these devices. Let's pick this switch here and explore it. So you can see we have a nice summary dashboard here, which gives us some key attributes like IP address, type, model, serial number, firmware version, etc., and some key metrics like the CPU and memory, the availability over time. If you're an MSP, you might set that to 30 days to track any SLAs that you have in place. We've got general latency and response times. We've got a summary of incidents, and we've got a summary of the ports as well on that particular device. If we go to the Resources tab, we can see a little more information about the makeup of this device in terms of modules, fans, CPUs, along with those, the status of those particular components. If we go to the Ports tab, we can get a more detailed breakdown of the information and status of the ports on this device. And we can see things like the attached hosts for each port, which is great for working out what's impacted when a device goes down. We've got a handy summary here of unused ports and how long they've been free. So that data is actually useful for capacity planning and be pulled into capacity planning reports. We can drill down further into individual ports, and we can see information like, again, the availability over a given time frame. Key metrics like the utilization and traffic, faults and discards. Now this port looks like it has no issues and is nowhere near its capacity, so that's a good news. If we go to the attributes dashboard, we can see we're just scratching the surface here, and at a quick glance, there's a huge number of metrics and attributes that we collect. There are far more for other objects like servers, VM platforms, SD controllers, and of course, if I come up here and click on the devices, parent device, again, for this parent device, there's a huge number of metrics and attributes that we collect. Now, all of this information you can pull into our dashboards, our reports, or access via the REST API. And all of this equates to millions of metrics being collected per server, mostly polled every 5 minutes and stored for as long as you want or as long as your disk allows. It's all set up and ready to go out of the box, although it's fully configurable if you want to add more. And by comparison, other products often require extensive manual configuration of what metrics to collect or poll far less frequently, or they require multiple servers to come even close to meeting the same level of scalability that Entuity can offer. If we just come back to my network for a second and pop into the incidents dashboard. Now, Entuity takes all of this data and it raises events based on status, threshold breaches on metrics. It includes anomaly detection using dynamic baselines, and combined with traps and syslog messages and webhook alerts, a large network can produce a large number of events. Now, fortunately, Entuity includes a powerful event management system to process all of these events and turn them into far fewer actionable incidents, employing various rules such as suppression, deduplication, hold off, N of M, event correlation, and downstream accessibility. Now, these rules are fully configurable, but the default out-of-the-box rules typically reduce event noise by more than 90%, helping you to focus on what matters. We can see here that my network's generating roughly 100 events per hour, but actually Entuity has done a good job of reducing those events to just 27 active incidents, which you need to focus on. Now you can drill into any incident to find out contributing events along with other key details, how long it's been open for, when it was first opened. Here we see quite a simple scenario where a port is receiving some high faults and then it resolves itself or has been resolved by the IT department, but it comes back and it gets resolved and it comes back. So it's an intermittent problem. Rather than show all of these events, we cut through the noise and we bring all those together into a single incident. Now, this is just a demo, but it does show how effective the rules can be at cutting out noise, allowing you to focus on the issues. And by comparison, many competitive products just throw everything at you, which is completely unmanageable, and you need to purchase a separate product to get rid of that noise. As you would expect, we have several out-of-the-box integrations to other third-party systems, such as BMC's Remedy and ServiceNow for ticketing, Moogsoft and Splunk for AIOps, Slack, email, and arbitrary scripting even to help with communications and DevOps automation. And you can trigger Entuity's built-in configuration management framework to automatically take corrective action and work towards providing zero-touch issue remediation of any of these events. Now, as well as providing incidents, Entuity can use the data it collects to help us monitor and manage network performance. For example, we can look at top-end statistics, we can plot charts of metrics and overlay basic trends, we can add a prediction as to when a metric will reach a certain level or what level it will be in a given time frame, and we can run one of Entuity's many out-of-the-box reports covering performance, heat maps, capacity, and trending, all within the product. But in addition to that, Entuity has a fully fledged flow analyzer, which supports all common flow formats. So you can see exactly how the bandwidth on your network is being used and who is sending data to who, what they're sending, when, and how much. For example, here I'm capturing flow from 3 core devices on my network. And we can see the data moving through HQ01 at the moment to find out the biggest users of the bandwidth. I'm showing this by conversation, so source and destination. Again, this is a demo, so the numbers are fairly similar. But let's imagine that the first conversation is by far the biggest user. I can now filter on that specific conversation. And having done that, I can then configure my chart to say, show me the applications for that particular set of users. And what we can see here is that there's actually 2 main applications that those 2 hosts are talking to each other on, so Screencast and EXCW, whatever that is. Screencast, perhaps Millie and Sophia are doing a WebEx at the same time that we are. Now, I can then determine, obviously, whether this is legitimate business usage or not, and I can take corrective action if necessary, such as adjusting quasi profiles to block or limit non-essential traffic. Now, flow data is limited to seeing applications at the port level, the UDP, TCP port level. But if we go to NBAR, we can look at NBAR data for this same device. Now, NBAR uses on-device deep packet inspection to better categorize traffic according to the rules that are set out on the device itself. And if we go to one of these interfaces, let's say, we can see even more detail about the applications in play, and we can even set up blacklists to be alerted if any data of the said application is seen. And here we can see that someone is sending and receiving blacklisted application traffic, so we may want to take a closer look at that. If I click on the blacklisted traffic, it will tell me exactly which applications I've blacklisted. So I don't want anyone using BitTorrent. I don't want anyone telnetting into those particular servers between those two hosts, and so on. Let's come back to our homepage. Now, another feature of Entuity is something we call SurePath. And SurePath gives administrators complete end-to-end visibility of the path that application traffic is actually taking between a client and a host providing a service. A SurePath can work in one of two modes. Firstly, it can send out real-time queries to devices, and this needs access to those devices, so it works well on the internal managed network, and it can determine the devices and the ports that traffic is traveling across down to the port level layer 2. And this is great for identifying the layer 2 and layer 3 dependencies that applications have on your network infrastructure, and you can monitor those dependencies for issues and bottlenecks that may affect application performance. You can also validate the path that an application is taking is what you expect it to be. Now, the second is to send in-band requests from an agent to the service provider. The first is agentless, the second requires an agent. The agent can either be on the Entuity server or remotely deployed. And since it's in-band, it works across both internal and the public internet to reach cloud-based applications and services. This includes key performance metrics like per hop and end-to-end latency and packet loss. And it's really useful for identifying and helping pinpoint the cause of application performance issues. And if the issue is in your service provider's network, then SurePath gives you good evidence to accelerate an issue resolution and avoid finger pointing. Now let's take a look at the second variant here, since it's becoming far more prevalent with cloud-based services and work from home. I can see that Teams and Office 365 is working well, so that's great news. Our BBC service is not so well, so let's dive in and take a look at that. Okay, so we can see the path or the paths that the traffic is taking from our agent over here to the service being provided. And unsurprisingly, there's a large element of redundancy both across the public internet and by the service provider, BBC in this case themselves. Now, we can see we've got, at the current time, two issues. One is here, and this is, if I just zoom in slightly, 26 millisecond latency. So this is exceeding my latency threshold. The other servers are responding within the threshold I've set. I have another issue over here, which if I click on that, it shows me this is a blacklisted device. So this is really useful to be alerted to when traffic goes across a path that you don't want it to go across. Now, this is extremely important. One example is a customer we found that had application being routed off-site to a third-party backup service before being routed back to the intended destination. Now, this resulted in poor application performance, and really it should have all stayed inside the internal network. It saturated the external link, which was really there for backup purposes, and of course it was a massive security hole because there was application traffic that should never have been going off-site in the first place. Now, Entuity continuously monitors the paths and maintains a history, so you can see the path and the key metrics that were relevant at any earlier time, say overnight or at the weekend. And if I click on one of these paths here, you can see how the paths change and also the alerts might change depending on any issues at that particular time. So this is useful if, for example, you get in on the Monday morning and people were complaining about outages over the weekend. You can go back in time to see, what was the cause of those outages in the past. It's also very useful for when migrating applications to the cloud. For example, you can test the performance of cloud-based applications in advance before rolling out live for all users. Let me come back to our homepage once more. Now, another great feature of Entuity is service modeling. We've got our list of services here. Let me click on the services dashboard. Service modeling allows you to create models of your critical services based on the components that are required to support those services. It saves you having to monitor the individual components in your system themselves, and it means you can view your network in a way that makes sense to your business. Now, services can include devices, interfaces, servers, IPSLA probes, shore path paths, which we've just looked at, subservices, and so much more. And of course, you can define specific logic as to how these components work together to provide the overall service status. Let's take a quick look at the order processing service, because this one's clearly got an issue. And we can see that this service is degraded. It's made up of 3 subservices. Again, the redundance link subservice is degraded, so we can drill down. And here my redundant connections, perhaps out to the internet, one of them it has failed, but one of them is still up. So my connection hasn't failed entirely. It's just degraded. I want to look at that because, you know, I want that redundancy back. It's an important link for me. Now, you can see it's simple, but a very effective usage of services and the logic that you can build up. And again, we can capture those all at the very top level here on my home dashboard. Now, I haven't covered many of the things that Entuity provides, such as config monitoring and management, virtualization support, software-defined management, reporting, QoS, IPSLA, VLAN management, multi-tenancy with support for overlapping IP address spaces on the same server. I haven't looked at our powerful drag and drop dashboard editor, which I'm sure you're all going to love. We haven't talked about the open APIs and so much more. But hopefully this demo has given you a taste of what the product can do, the kind of information and the amount of information it gathers, and you'll be keen to follow up to find out more.